All right, everyone. Welcome back to our next session. Now, I have with me Mr. Jonathan O, the CEO of Supplycart. Right, Supplycart is also one of our good friend and also our winner from our previous physical-based conference down here that we organized in JB. And today, Jonathan is going to give a keynote to share with us how do you cut your business spends and giving us some of the insights to manage burn so that all the businesses, e-commerce, or F&B, SMEs that is attending today will be able to survive through this period of time. Jonathan, say hi to everyone.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Feng, for having me back. It's been great to be able to share our insights and great to be able to share with everybody through these times. And I guess we are journeying together. So looking forward to share my personal perspective and some of the things that Supplycart is doing through these times.
Why not give us a quick introduction of Supplycart for the benefit of all our audience sitting in front of the screen? What exactly is Supplycart and what do you guys do?
Sure. So Supplycart is a cloud-based procurement solution. We help businesses simplify their source, procure, and pay, and giving them an integrated marketplace as well to be able to digitalize their purchases, as well as giving them more businesses from all over Malaysia, our corporate clients.
Yeah, so basically you, from what I know is that you help corporate customers manage their procurement flow to make it easier for them to actually order stuff from their suppliers, and you basically work with also a very big pool of merchants that's on your platform right now.
Exactly.
How many merchants you have right now in total on the merchant side?
So from a merchant perspective, we are about 1,000 merchants. And we work with a lot of SMEs as well. So not just large multinationals, but a big pool of our clients are also SMEs.
So what are the kind of products are there? What kind of merchants are there already in on this Supplycart?
Okay. So well, basically the 1,000 merchants that we have cover a range of about 23 products and services categories. We have now more than 20,000 products and services listed on our platform. And basically, we're not limited to, it can be anything in terms of what businesses want and what merchants wants to list, as long as there's a demand or there's a need in terms of these products and services. SMEs can locate them and merchants now can give those products and services to these clients.
So like, before these MCO and this COVID-19, I believe this digital transformation is already kind of like a thing slowly going big in Malaysia, and a lot of people are talking about digitizing their whole business processes, and that's kind of like the reason why you guys are born, right? What kind of trends do you see happening after this COVID-19 and this MCO hits in terms of trends of purchase? Corporates, are they really slowing down a lot? Can you share with us a little bit of insights on that part?
Yep, sure. You're right. I think pre-COVID, definitely there are a number of companies moving towards digital transformation and digitalizing their business processes. And I think when MCO hit and the reality suddenly became that a lot of companies were not equipped to move in the digital space, especially merchants as well. No doubt the e-commerce space for B2C has been around for a while. But when the COVID hit and the MCO happened, a lot of businesses were not digitalized. And it was very clear that the importance of having this channel now during this time to do business is so important. And I believe that Supplycart, as we have been advocating this for a while now, and this is exactly what we have set out to do our mission, we believe that now the time is right in terms of linking both merchants as well as now corporates as well themselves are ready to move to using these digital channels. Now, we do foresee a challenging time during this moment as a lot of companies now are very prudent and looking in terms of what they're spending, what they're buying. We see that consistently across a lot of our clients already, that moving forward post COVID, they would be much more looking into, cost saving, cost cutting, how do they spend properly. But nevertheless, I believe there's still opportunities for companies and merchants as well to be able to gain more business and reach out to this. Yeah.
So what kind of products that people buy the most? Corporates buy the most on the supply cart.
Right. So as mentioned earlier, we cover a lot of categories of products and services. I think where Supplycart's strength is, we cover areas of, we call it indirect procurement or indirect materials. What that means is, we provide in terms of your technological products, your office supplies, your facility services, for warehousing. We help with packaging materials, those hardwares, power tools. So really a wide array in terms of supporting the business day to day and how the businesses run. And that's where Supplycart's procurement solution comes in to help manage all this for our clients.
Great. So without further ado, why not let's move on into the keynote presentation.
Sure.
We have Jonathan to present how to cut your business spend and insights to managing your burn, right? Jonathan, all over to you.
Thank you. So today I'll be sharing with you in terms of how to cut your business spend and insights to managing your burn. Just to let you know that this is a personal perspective in terms of our own experience, as well as what I have sort of observed as well through this time. So just a brief introduction again in terms of Supplycart and how we help businesses towards digitalization. We work with businesses to connect them. We allow our merchants and our clients to go to a closed platform for their sourcing solutions. We provide an e-procurement platform as well to have this end-to-end source to pay process for our clients. And finally, we are empowering companies with digital technology. So as shared earlier, we have about close to 1,000 merchants, 20 over 1,000 products and services, and we have more than 1,800 companies with us at this point in time. So let's address the elephant in the room in terms of what we're going through right now. We are definitely hit in a situation that none of us have prepared for. And I think what I want to share is businesses, especially as much as coronavirus is hitting people, definitely businesses are affected as well. And we are looking in terms of preparing for the long haul. And how do we stay relevant? How do we adapt to this current situation that we are in? So coming to the burn, I just wanted to break it down in terms of breaking down the different type of burns that a company will go through. So we use the term burn, reason being because a lot of times, companies could have a negative cash flow or positive cash flow. I guess especially with very early stage companies, definitely there is a negative cash flow. And I'm just going to run you through some of the definitions as we go along to provide you better examples, right? So from a gross burn perspective, basically it's your available cash divided by your monthly operating expenses. So what that means is your rent, utilities, your staff wages, and the net burn basically is your available cash divided by monthly operating losses minus your minus operating expenses. So basically, this is basically telling you how much cash your company requires to keep running over a given period of time. So with this example, let me give you an example of a sample cash flow statement. So suppose company X in Berhad has a monthly revenue of 5,000. Of course, their operating expenses are more. They have 10,000 operating expenses a month, which means that they have a negative cash flow of 5,000 every month. And assuming that in the bank right now, or you have received an investment, or you have used your own money, right? You have 50,000 cash in hand. So based on this amount, your company's gross burn rate would be 5 months. And you could see this calculation. And because you still have some sort of revenue coming in, we could then calculate what's your net burn like. And in this case, your net burn is 10 months, right? So how this is the timeline that you have, is the runway that you have, right? In terms of how long before you run out of cash. So with this concept laid out, I'll be sharing you in terms of what are some of the things happening in the industries, and what is the burn rate like, and what's the cash buffer like for certain companies. So the next slide I wanted to show you is basically a cash buffer days breakdown. And I think this was really relevant in terms of looking at how much cash does a certain business and in the industry, and they will have to sort of roll and use that money, and before that cash runs out. So I'm quoting from JP Morgan. This was a study that they did in a survey of a couple businesses in the States. But I believe that this is quite relevant as well. If you guys are tuned in, you could relate to your own industries. And what basically this shows is what is the median days of small businesses, and what is their sort of cash inflows and outflows. And we could see that 50% small businesses hold a cash buffer large enough just to support 27 days of their typical outflows. So this is related to the US, but I believe it's relevant as well to the industry, which is why I believe at this moment in time, a lot of F&Bs in Malaysia as well is finding it challenging due to the cash that they have and the inflows and outflows. So I believe that during this time, especially for businesses, we should be able to match outflows to inflow cycle as much as possible. And the only way for us to do this is, how do we manage this both inflows and outflows? And if we don't ask, we won't get them. In terms of, do we get terms? Do we negotiate with our tenants? Our landlord, in terms of how is our rentals like and all this kind of stuff. So it's very interesting data to see the different type of businesses and what's their cash flow like. And this is to get us thinking about, how much more cash do I have to run? How much more cash do I have coming in or burning? So some couple of insights I'll be running through with you would be in terms of how to manage your business spend and managing your burn effectively. And the 5 areas that I'll be looking towards to discuss with you, is sharing with you as well, is going through a scenario planning and modeling, which means what are we doing right now in terms of planning our budgeting, our projections, how are we doing it? I will be sharing as well in terms of looking at restructuring and reorganizing the company if there's a need to. What are some of the sales and marketing and partnerships opportunities there to be able to help us manage our business spend? Couple of sharing in terms of fundraising. What is the scene right now? What's the sentiment of investors? And finally, I'll be going through some administrative and general costs that you could look into to be able to then manage your spend more effectively. So diving right in, here is basically a model that I would like to share with you in terms of, as you remember the example earlier, how much runway you have left. And upon getting that runway, whether is it less than 12 months, 12 to 24 months, or more than 24 months, here are some of the things that I believe that you could look into in terms of managing it throughout this period. So firstly, being able to run a few of these scenarios. It's good to be able to run a best case, a worst case scenarios in terms of budgeting and financial projections, right? Looking really deep diving into what you're spending on, whether business is affected. And I believe throughout this time, a lot of businesses are affected. So how do you factor in these scenarios to project what's going to happen within this couple of months or post 12 months and stuff like that? The next thing to look into is be able to keep executing as the business progress with more clarity on the micro scenarios. Now, I know that, nobody has a crystal ball what's going to happen after this, or how long coronavirus is here to stay, and how long MCO would be, extended to. But what we need to be looking into is, how do we keep executing and be nimble, as well as change very quickly in terms of what the micro scenarios are. What happens if it gets extended? What kind of revenue models, what kind of channels are we getting our revenue now? How do we protect our current revenue? And I'll be sharing some of those details later. So at the end of the day, each scenario that you run, from whether is it the plan A, plan B, plan C, or worst case, best case, each scenario has to translate for your business a longer runway. Now, if you're looking at below 12 months runway, and that's considered a short, how do you then put into consideration to reduce your OPEX? Anywhere between 20 to 30%, and the goal here is to be able to survive and go longer, right? So from a working capital perspective, I have broken down into these key areas that you could look into in terms of, one, if you are doing business in terms of trading, how do you reduce inventory? How do you do sort of just in time, or a drop shipping model that you don't have a very high cash outlay in terms of keeping inventory? You could be looking into as well, working with suppliers to obtain terms, understanding the situation. Your suppliers will be, I guess, looking for a long-term partner, and they would like to see you around still. And how do you discuss terms with your suppliers? I think a big thing then we need to look into is, if we are having a short runway, definitely there shouldn't be any terms to our clients. And potentially we should start offering sort of discounts as well, right, to our clients, in terms of saying, look, can you pay me earlier? And what are some of the things that we could negotiate, And the next thing here is prioritize your sustainability of business. At this point in time, the business needs to survive this period. How do you get it past 12 months? And currently, there is a lot of banks as well, that they have allowed you to pay your loans later. Certain landlords as well has said during this period to pay rent, and that has really helped. How are we able to further, cut that or get further discounts, right? And being very aggressive in our cost-cutting initiatives, basically is really taking out the fat. What can we save on as best as possible? If you're a business that you have calculated that you have about between 12 to 24 months of runway, that's good. I guess it's being able to wait it out longer. So how do you go and push to have a longer runway? And firstly is being able to push your suppliers for longer terms. How do you ensure your collection of payments are timely? I think a lot of businesses, when times are good, we tend to forget that there's a lot of money sitting out there. How do we chase effectively and get our clients to pay us as quickly as possible? And I think those has to be looked in, very frequently, and to be able to collect as fast as possible from the clients. Also, because you have some time, how do you reassess in terms of maximizing your runway to 24 months and beyond, right? How are you able as well to maybe leverage on short-term financing? Maybe, if you have certain large deals that come through and there's a very high outlay, potentially then businesses could consider an invoice financing, and there's a lot of options out there, right? The next thing is, if you have 24 months runway, or even longer, that's great. Now, how do you take this time now to relook into your costs? What are the inefficiencies that could have been building up, because we were so busy with our business and trying to grow the business, but we have not taken a look really and deep dive into actually where the money is being spent, where our business spend is. And I think it's a good time to relook into where's all our costs like. The next thing, if you have 24 months, I would say continue to build muscles. And what that means is really continue to grow your company. The stronger you are, the longer that you could prolong the company runway. And I think that's a good thing. And you could potentially then also have time to explore what kind of funding alternatives are out there, whether is it venture capital, whether is it going for financial institutions, or even considering an M&A. But of course, during this period, M&A really has to be strategic and looking into, if it's an acquirer, and definitely it's a buyer's market, and they will be sort of squeezing in terms of getting a good deal out of it. So these are some of the things that you could look into. And also ultimately, how do we increase our margins and revenue through this time? And by doing so, it helps with our bottom line, it helps with our profits, and that translates to cash flow, and that translates to a longer runway as well. The next thing here is consideration of restructuring and reorganizing your company. I am not sort of going into the whole area of people perspective, and that's a whole different topic altogether. And I think for my sharing, I think it will be an area that companies should look into. But nevertheless, I think these are the key areas that companies now could start looking into at this point in time, or you would have already started looking into it, right? Is the business able to function during this time, and what pivots need to be made? I guess with the lockdown now, a lot of MCO period now, a lot of companies now have sort of reinvented the way, B2B and B2C now crossing. Some B2B companies as well are already serving B2C at this moment in time. And I think that's a move that, we should consider if that's relevant to your business, but not overdo it and try to do too many things at one time. I believe that is more in that way. So how do we look into our business? Where is there any reorganizing? What kind of values or what kind of offering are we giving to our clients if it's through this time, right? An example for us is we serve a lot of B2B, right? A lot of companies, right? And if throughout this period as a supplier, we're not able to deliver, or as a business, we are not able to open, how do we prepare, or how do we think about what can we do post MCO to support our clients further? How do we protect revenue, right? Hunker down and define key strategies and messaging. The business potentially messaging could change throughout this time, as we need to stay relevant in terms of what clients are looking for, what businesses are looking for. So I guess it's a good time to really understand now what your clients are looking at. And as shared earlier, we believe that throughout this period, a lot of people are hunkering down, then thinking of managing their costs better. How do they, manage the spend better, right? So if that is what our clients are looking for, then we should then build around this messaging across as well. How do we help our clients to save costs? How do we help our clients to save, improve their processes, maybe increase efficiencies? So it's really related to how you define your business throughout this time. Resource allocation and planning. So what activities are important? I think a very big thing at this moment in time, the key activities now is really protecting revenue. How do we get more sales throughout this period? I think a lot of times, a lot of business now are thinking, how do I keep or get more business at this time? And whether is there certain roles that need to change. So I guess here also is really into looking at the activities of your company right now, which areas activities have sort of decreased, which areas that could further you double down on these activities. For example, whether a lot of times our salespeople can't go out, right? And the doubling down on activities in terms of reducing activities to meet clients outside, traveling, going out, go here, go there. But now, how do you use online tools or set up digital channels to be able to reach out and do this kind of stuff with your clients? So it's about, allocating your resources in the right place that will produce the results, and always track those with data. How are the conversions like? What was the engagements like? And from there, you double down, you triple down, at a cheap cost, right? Not overspend it. So bear in mind, during your restructuring and reorganizing, you're looking at survival mode. Do what it takes to keep the business going. Do what it takes. And I've seen SMEs now, and really going to survival mode, right? And it's tough times, and I could really, really relate to each of you. And we need to do what we need to do for our business, right? And the end of the day is how do this business survive? How do we keep going? Don't give up. How do we persevere on? How do we stay relevant as well? So the last thing is really protect revenue based on the micro environment. So the environment is changing. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. A lot of people are just, let's see what works and what doesn't work. But I think a very important thing to first look into when you're looking at restructuring and reorganizing is having a whole holistic picture of your business, and how do I protect my current revenue first from further dropping, right? Some companies have already looked at 50% drop in March, and we hear that in the market as well, that potentially in the month of April as well it could be 100%, right? And it will take a while to go back. how do we protect our current revenue of our current business right now? And I hope that's something that we all are looking into. I wanted to share with you in terms of what I found interesting, and this was a report done by Barclays, and basically they believe in pre-coronavirus and also post, and businesses, each of our businesses will fall into these different categories that, you know, everybody sees a drop in during this time of COVID, but what happens post? And there are companies that will gain, right? They will gain a lot of shares, and some companies will just recover, right? Going back to, you know, where they were. And T+1, T+2 could be in a range of 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, and so on. And of course, then there are companies which are impaired, which means then there's only partial recovery, you know, but a permanent impairment that where the business was from before, you know, it won't be there already. And if you could see here, Barclays sort of provided in terms of their insights, in terms of who is gaining right now through this period, as well as some of the impaired industries, you know. And I guess, you know, for travel and all this is really tough at this moment in time. So where do our businesses fall in this? And how do we prepare as well for these different stages? Are we gaining? Are we going to recover? Are we going to be impaired? Right? And this will form part of our restructuring and reorganizing activities. From a sales and marketing and partnership perspective, well, I guess it's really now tightening the belt, right? Businesses now are looking at, you know, spending prudently. I wouldn't use the term of totally cutting, and you would know best in terms of where your business is at. And, you know, if runway is short, then potentially, you know, the reduction percentage could be very much higher, right? That you might reduce all these promotional activities, you know, seeding, PR, and all these kind of marketing activities to a very minimal, you know, and see, you know, what's the shift like, right? So predominantly, marketing spend is always an area that we should definitely look into in managing our burn. And if you are able to keep that at a minimal and test with low amounts and see what works, and slowly increase based on what ROIs we get. So reusing those ROIs into marketing spend could be an area that you could look into as well, right? We definitely see a shift from to insight and digital sales model. As my example earlier now, you know, I believe a lot of salespeople, you know, especially you guys, right, that if your business requires you to see clients, do demos, you know, do a lot of stuff. I think there's a shift now happening, you know, and I think this MCO period has taught us that there's different tools that we could and models that we could look into, and how do we change that? And definitely that would reduce costs as well, right? Imagine now that instead of being able to see 3 clients a day, if you were supposed to go outside, you know, you could double that by you know, using digital tools like this webinar that we're having right now, or using different tools that you've seen out there, right? So definitely there's a shift. How do you use different channels to prioritize your digital roadmap? So shift to lower cost coverage and channels where possible. So what that means is you would have already seen where, you know, your most cost effective channels is, and if those are your best performing channels, then keep to those lower cost channels and not, you know, spend too much on those high cost channels. No doubt that they do give you some returns, but this is a time now to really be able to lower your costs. The next thing I think that businesses could look into is, you know, the speed of execution is also part of managing your burn, right? And how you effectively go through these times. Building a mission critical team, and what that means here is really, as the environment, macro environment is changing right now, we must be able to be very quickly adapt. How do we quickly execute? And as business owners or as entrepreneurs, you know, if we are able to identify these quick execution teams, then that translates to higher sales, better conversions, and all this kind of stuff. So if you haven't looked into, you know, do you have this team, you know, that is very nimble, that they could execute very quickly and test different revenue channels, test different cost strategies, I think it's a good time to look into these teams, right? It's also a good time to look into partnerships. I think throughout this period now, the good thing that has come out of it is it's so great to be able to see everybody coming together to work together, to be able to go through this together. It's not a journey that individually that you're going through, but we're going through it together. So we have seen that a lot of partnerships now will be more important more than ever. There is possibility as well. How would you share that marketing cost, right? By forming a partnership with synergistic companies, right? We are going to B2B. How do we could be seeing the same stakeholders. Now, how do we provide a holistic solution to this? How do we lead gen for each other? And I think that's a good time as well, for us to manage the burn. So imagine now typically 5 companies now to reach out to that same stakeholder. Everybody is spending, right? And of course, the winner is, of course, whatever digital platforms that you're spending your ads on. Why not come together and see how we could share that, divide by 5, right? So that means now you're only paying 1/5 for that same stakeholder for you to reach out to. And I think that's a perfect way to sort of look into in this time right now. Who can you partner with? Is it partnering with Supplycart? Is it partnering with your suppliers maybe as well, right? And that cost could be shared. Coming to the interesting part, we're looking at in terms of funding. So if you don't need funding at this moment in time, great. If you're looking to fundraise, now, I think at this moment in time, it's a challenging time, in my personal opinion. I believe that it would take a while for venture capital or any funding to happen from a sort of a venture capital side, especially startups, right? Tech companies. We believe that prolonging your runway and looking through up till 2021 will be the period that funding could restart again. Of course, nobody has a crystal ball throughout this period. Investors as well, they read the news, and it doesn't have that media. Of course, all these news is happening. Whether it's in US, in Europe, in Asia. So I believe there are investors still that are looking out for deals, but I believe that they'll be taking their time, right? So for businesses that are looking for funding, really it's now time to sort of work with existing investors, how to prolong the runway, and are you able to sort of structure something as a deal sweetener for either your existing investors or your potential new investors if it's a top-up is required, right? Whether it's a bridge or a convertible note, because at this moment in time, investors will sort of be looking into where can I find a good deal now, right? Which company now is going to be a smash hit? Who are the gainers, right? Going back to the few slides that I shared earlier, who's going to gain most from this? And I think that's where the investors will be looking into. As a business, I think investors, when they're going to fund you as well, they will be looking into how did the business react through that time, of challenge. What did we do during that time of Corona? Did we do initiatives to protect the equity interest? Did we do cost cutting? And I think that is where investors will look into in terms of see how sort of prudent the company is, and protecting the investors' interests through the hard times. So I think something then the topic that we're discussing today, somehow some sort of initiative needs to be done by the companies, and investors want to see that as well. It could be wrong if you are in a very high gainers and you spend a lot and you don't cut costs, but you're achieving very good results. Yeah, by all means, right? And it's be able to find that investor who appreciates that growth, right? I also do see, in my personal opinion, that there will be lower valuation trends, definitely lower multipliers, and investors looking for higher return expectations. They'll be looking in terms of, okay, yeah, we can't give you that high valuation anymore. How do we keep it, realistic? How do we get more higher returns as well? And I think that, we need to look into what kind of conditions and what kind of expectations that investors have. And it's us to exercise, our wisdom as well in terms of looking how do we select these investors. So the last area, what else can we do to manage our company's burn? well, we could get our house in order. What are some of the general administrative costs that we have not looked into, or what can we do to improve that? And that covers a wide array, right? In terms of our facility, our office, what kind of tools are we using, or what kind of tools we have not used, what kind of inefficiencies are there that is, costing us money or costing us a very, slow turnaround. So these are some of the things that we believe that businesses could look into. So one, as shared earlier right at the beginning, it's time to digitalize. I believe at this MCO period now, businesses now, in terms of communication, working from home, right? The tools that we have not been exposed to now has suddenly popped up, and that we need to use these tools now for the business to continue. It's very important now to continue this business to then identify what tools are there. It's not just about having a website anymore, right? It's about how we're using the different digital channels to work to our business advantage. Can I list my business somewhere now, right? And I think those that were already listed, great. They were seeing, some traction happening throughout this period, and moving on, they've already set up, how do we further improve? And if we are a business that we have not, I think that is now really a time to really start looking into how do we digitalize? How do we expose our business to more channels? And these channels then potentially will give us new revenue streams. And I can't stress the importance now in terms of, from a cost effectiveness perspective, improving your cost. A lot of these tools to digitalize or service digitalize, it's fairly cheap as well. And you have to make a decision as a business, where can I digitalize as best as possible? The next thing is making technology accessible. And this is really what kind of technology you're using within your company, right? You'll be surprised that, there are companies that don't even have an accounting software. It's still very manual in nature. And I think it's really time to start looking into that, right? What kind of cloud-based or SaaS solutions that you could use, whether would it be in sales, HR, finance, operations, or even your procurement, right? How do you digitalize that and use tools out there to be able to help your business? There is definitely a benefit to this, right? From a technological cost perspective, it's definitely will increase efficiency. The right tools will be able to produce quicker results, and allowing businesses to focus where you need to focus. And in this moment in time, it's really driving, survival. How do I manage my cost better? At the same time, how do I grow? How do I be profitable? So making technology accessible across the company is something that we should look into. Watch your bottom line. I believe a lot of times, you're like, pay only, don't waste time, right? But I think now it's not the time to just pay. Being able to compare, being able to optimize our bottom line, right? How do we get more, margins? How do we, for every dollar we spend, is it spent wisely? And I think it's definitely something businesses should not overlook. Look at how you could optimize it. Your business spend matters. Every single thing matters what you spend on, because every cent, every dollar and every cent saved is every cent and every dollar contributing to your runway, contributing to your burn, right? And that prolongs your company's cash flow and also your runway. Fourth, reducing costs through vendor management. There are cases that now you could consolidate your vendors, right? Decreasing those unnecessary spends, reducing your payable activities. It's a good time then to be able to engage companies, or you yourself conduct a benchmarking initiative and see now where the gaps, what kind of improvements that you could make. And if it's activities that are non-revenue generating or what, you could potentially think of outsourcing. And sometimes outsourcing is cheaper compared to handling yourself. I believe that, sometimes if it's let the experts handle it. I am not in logistics. I am not the expert, in doing fleet management. Why not then engage somebody at a fairly reasonable price and allow them to do this more efficiently for us? And I believe that is also improving our burn and our cost as well, right? How payment, inventory, warehouse, and distribution. So I guess the motto here is really less is more. How do we do less, but we gain so much more? And the last point, point 5, is really shifting our spend priorities. Very prioritizing our spend. Is our spend going to, very vanity kind of spend, or is our spend going to the right places? So if we're able to prioritize this spend, right, I think what we should not neglect here is there's a certain proportion of the spend that needs to go to the business. But at the same time, I'd like to encourage us also to look at the livelihood of our people as well. I guess people, it's the lifeline of the business. Without people, the business can't continue. So, what kind of spend are we prioritizing, right? Could we balance that out, and could we find gaps, and what can we reduce, and what can we increase, right? So coming to the end, as a founder, as a business owner, I guess here are some insights that we need to look into, and I think it's the hard decisions that we need to make. Some things to really consider here is, creating the runway for ourselves. Have we taken the necessary steps to protect our business? And I think it's a responsibility of founders. There's nobody else to take that responsibility. We have to take responsibility of our business, right? And sometimes we have to bring that axe, right? And the axe is to chop, right? To cut something, and it's our responsibility to hold that axe to look at areas that we could cost cut. The next thing is, build a business continuity plan, BCP, if you need to. There's a lot of resources out there. If you need, I could share with you some as well. Just reach out to me. You'll be running the different scenarios. Who are the people involved in this? What kind of case studies that we could do or demonstrate, that our business is protected, right? And I've heard companies now looking into this, but don't overcomplicate it, right? Don't come up with a whole 50-page BCP plan, right? Do what is necessary for your business to continue, right? And I believe that the hard decisions we will need to make as founders, and I think I would encourage everybody to be able to be transparent and open. I know it's tough sometimes to be able to let go our guard or tell the hard truth to our teams or people around us. But I think it's necessary to be able to do so, right? Being open and transparent, nothing to hide. I think that is really something, and just say for what it is and explain the whole situation. And I've heard really many cases where companies have done that, and as a family, as a team, those companies are journeying together through this storm. So, I'm sure you know your business well, you know your people well, and you know your investors well. So why not try it? Again, if you never ask, you never know, right? And also be decisive with one single stroke. And what I mean by that is, more than ever now, as much as we are trying things and we're trying to try things out, it's good to just make a decision and just one time go with it. And this is the plan. I guess it builds up a lot of uncertainty as well and stress, right? If we keep changing things and we don't allow things to run, right? Today I want to try this, tomorrow I tried something else, the day after I try something else again. And I think that is really counterproductive. It's not great to have that kind of And if you plan everything well, you run the scenarios, then be decisive and make that single stroke change, and review it and give time for, of course, comfortable time for the results to come. And if it doesn't, then drop it. Do A/B testing and stuff like that. The other area is then fundraising outcomes are not only dependent on how a business does or its matrix, but also on the micro environment. Now, yes, there is a situation where you're doing really well, right? Sales have doubled or tripled through this time, right? And your matrices are through the roof. But from a macro environment, investors are not ready to invest. So, how do you manage that expectations, right? And if you're doing great, and if you start fundraising, and you have interest, that's perfect, that's awesome, right? But that doesn't mean, and that doesn't guarantee this company being able to secure funds, right? It's not that alone, right? There's so many other factors, right? What's the micro environment? How's the economy is going to be like? Institutional investors are they have limited partners as well, and some of these are corporates as well. How are they reacting to this time? So I think that's something to be mindful of. The next thing I'd like to encourage founders is really being able to track, our emotional and mental health. When I said our, is I'm in it together as well with you, and being able to go through these times emotionally and mentally, it's a challenge. And I think again, I'm really encouraged to see so many companies coming together, being able to just check on each other. Hey, how are you? Keeping each other accountable and bouncing off ideas. And it doesn't have to be a lonely journey. There are people out there there's a lot of people out there that are more than happy to spend time and share with you as well their challenges, and you could learn something from them who have gone through it as well, right? And the final thing I think I would like to share with founders as well, continue the engagement and connection with the team. I find it challenging as well working from home. We don't physically see our teams, right? And being able to engage with them, connect with them, checking on them one-on-one, being able to motivate them, just be that, just finding out how they are, and I think that goes a long way in keeping our teams in good emotional and mental health as well, as much as it's for us, right? And I guess setting expectations right and keeping checks on each other, right? So with that, I sort of come to an end in terms of my sharing. I have sort of created a survey, and I would really love to hear from everyone, in terms of how is your businesses impacted, through this time. And if you could just help me with a short survey with this link, it'd be great. And also, finally, the last plug for Supplycart here is really, we would like to walk alongside with businesses like yourself. How do we help you through these times? We are more than happy to share, in terms of how we could, improve your cost, what's your bottom line, how we could help you with some price benchmarking, how we could list your business as well, expose you to different channels. And we believe that hopefully this would sort of help with the runway and help with the burn. So with that, thank you very much, everyone, for joining me and listening in. We hope that you stay safe, stay protected during this MCO period. So back to you, Feng.
All right. Thank you very much, Jonathan. It's a very, very detailed, I would say, so much sharing and information that I'm also absorbing a lot at this point of time, and suddenly realize, like, I'm probably also at the category 1, that's within 6 months and less than 12 months. But I think a lot of people, a lot of businesses out there are facing similar situations. I think the bigger you are, actually, it seems like the shorter runway you have right now, right? Yeah. And I think a lot of these suggestions inside down here are actually very, very actionable. So thank you very much for sharing, Jonathan. And so for all of our audience sitting in front, remember, if you are getting value from this session, type yes in the comment section so that we all can see it. And for all of you who actually have questions that you want Jonathan to dive in a little bit deeper, you have something more that you wanted to ask, remember to also type it down in the comment area, because Jonathan and his team is going to be still around with us for the next 10, 15, or maybe 20 minutes to answer some of your questions here. So remember to type it out. We'll select the questions and we'll be answering it. So Jonathan, we are about time, and thank you very much for your sharing. Thank you very much for the offer. Stay safe, stay healthy. Send my regards to your team, and thank you very much for joining us and in this session. We'll see you. Thank you.
Thank you, Fang.